Right, so another great week, another great display from the championship. Some great goals, some great players, and we go again. Week 2 review of the EFL Championship. Welcome back to the DB show. And we're going to start it off with the important game of Birmingham v Bristol City, which finished 2-2. And question is now for Birmingham fans, what is going on? For the last 2 weeks against Sheffield United as well. And don't get me wrong, Sheffield United weren't great last week either. But the finishing ability in the final third for you guys with Birmingham are really bad, you know. You guys are my dark horses for this season to be in the playoffs. I think you have made some good signings, but after having a great pre-season, I honestly thought Chris Davis would have started the season stronger than this. Question on my lips is this: why is Jay Stanfield playing on the left? I'm very confused. You know, Jay Stanfield did phenomenal things for you guys in the Championship and League One, scoring a lot of goals, getting promotion and stuff like that. You know, Jay Stanfield has been an exceptional player since I've been watching him since Fulham, and to sign him is an incredible signing. But I would presume why you're not playing him up front. I'm not too sure. If any Birmingham fans do watch this, please let us know in the comments. But Jay Stanfield, I'm hoping something gets sorted because I'm just very confused why that's happening. But personally, in this game right here, even though Birmingham were attacking in the sense of getting the ball more chance in there, they weren't a threat like Bristol City. Bristol City were pretty much getting the best chances in that game and finishing a lot better with accuracy on shots, I would say. And obviously coming to score first, Bristol City did with Scott Twine. Really didn't exactly do anything great for Birmingham, you know. It was Bristol City to do it again in the second half with a phenomenal goal from Dominic Bollard, who has signed from Leyton Orient, I believe. Now, Dominic Bollard has been killing League One with Leyton Orient last season, and personally, I would sit here and say what a signing it is so far for Bristol City. You know, he did obviously sign from Southampton, I think it was. You know, I have seen him in Southampton, thought he was brilliant there. And obviously going from League One now to the Championship. Look, first goal for him, for this club. Hopefully we see many more. He's a very talented individual, very good player. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we see some more goals from him. But I think in this game, Bristol City showed not more momentum, but more of an attacking threat on the bounce. So, Birmingham, look, I think you have a cracking defence. I think Clarera and Newman are brilliant at the back for the Championship. And Beadle as well in goal. But there's got to be a lot better performances for sure from your team. You know, you had Ethan Laird, Patrick Roberts, Damari Gray, all on the bench for fuck's sake. I don't know why. Even Dale Fry. You know, these are players that I presume would have been on the field. You know, Samuel, is a great player, but I honestly think Ethan Laird would have been a lot better for the defensive issues right now. But look, fingers crossed, hopefully Birmingham gets something sorted. You know, I don't know what's going to happen in the transfer window for you. But the question on the lips is, do you think Chris Davis is doing a good job at Birmingham? And do you think he should stay or should he go? Moving on to Lincoln v Portsmouth. Portsmouth had obviously a terrible start to the Championship with losing 3-1 at home to QPR. But what I would say is this. Obviously, look, it's away to Lincoln. It is. And you know, you would presume Portsmouth to win this, and they did. Now, Lincoln did start the game off good, but for me, Portsmouth scored a goal, and it pretty much killed the game off, pretty much. You know, they were still fighting Lincoln in that first half, but I would sit here and say, you know, with Lincoln's depth and quality, I just don't see them doing anything that amazing in the Championship this season, you know. I think signing-wise, you know, you have a good player in Adam Reach, but apart from that, I would expect a lot more from a couple of players there, which I've seen. You know, House, 100% for sure. But when you go up against Portsmouth, especially where you play a talk of the town at the moment. There's two kids for Portsmouth, and one of them obviously scored against you guys in McQueen. Now, McQueen struggled to score against QPR, struggled to play in a way where Amadou and Bengue was stopping him. And Amadou and Bengue, for your first game to come off the bench and go up against him is a bit of a struggle anyway. Look, Amadou and Bengue is probably one of the best right backs in the Championship. Very strong, very good individual. And, you know, to go up against him and struggle, you know, unlucky. But this week, you know, you showed your talent, your quality. I've been spoken about McQueen quite a bit from people that support Chelsea, how he's a good youngster, very good finisher, good on the ball, runs well, and dribbling-wise, flair, all of this stuff. He does carry, you know, he's very young for a 17-year-old to be in the Championship playing first-team football. But yeah, hopefully we'll see a lot more of him. We'll talk about him more when we gradually see the season go. But obviously, Brooke Smith as well, another player that I really enjoyed watching last week for Portsmouth. Brooke Smith it could be potentially another signing, well, another person to be watching out for Portsmouth. You know, he did look okay against QPR. I wouldn't say this much about him this game. But I think star guys really shined out today in Segic. You know, what cracking free kick he scored this week. Honestly, brilliant goal. You know, Bishop, you would presume he would have scored by now. But I'll be honest, he's struggling. The balls that are used to seeing him get into the box are... I think people are starting to understand how you play. And, you know, there was differences to your game plan. But I think with Lincoln, obviously, because of how weak they were and you being the better side... I think that's pretty much why you've got the best result out of it. You know, I'm not saying shit, but you have good players in Devlin, Swanson, Segic, and obviously Kamara. You know, obviously the third goal, what wonder goal it was from Ebu Adams, and he got, I think it was man of the match. But some great strikes last week and this week. But, you know, I think you have a good coach. John Mousinho is good. But I just think possibly you need to bring in a bit of depth for certain areas just to help you out and go from there. But ending 3-1 for Portsmouth, really good result for them. One of the teams that I'm probably going to get hate for in this one, that I've really enjoyed watching at the end of last season and this season. And I know they beat us, obviously, in the Cup on penalties. And I think we gave them a good game. And I think we're going to struggle against them. And hopefully we get a good result, though. And that's Millwall. So Millwall played Norwich over the weekend at the Den, beat them 3-0, and they beat them 3-0 in a way that is so comfortable. You know, like such a dominant game for Millwall to win. I think they're going to be up there again this season. I know I only predicted them to be behind us in the prediction of the table, but this season I think it's just going to be another crazy one for them. You know, I think they're definitely going to be in the playoffs for sure, but this team does remind me of Warnock's QPR back in 2011. The style of play and the way they're scoring goals, where they use the striker a lot, and obviously a certain midfielder to create them opportunities for the striker as well. You know, they're very counter-attacking. They're very good in the box, very good at set pieces because of what they have, and they use that threat. And that's why Alex Neil is such a good coach in the Championship, because he likes to use physicality in his teams a lot. So for example, Cooper, great centre back. I think Mill will have the best defense in the league for what I think. You know, they still haven't got certain players back from injury, and Kramer and some others, but I think they do a phenomenal job even without Kramer anyway. But Jake Cooper, like I was saying, he's a centre back that likes to get into the box and set pieces and even run in there before, even when it comes down to the last minute attacks. You know, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, that third goal for Millwall against Norwich, you had 4 or 5 players in that box wanting it. So the attack for you guys is just on point, and defense. You know, you're very box to box. You like to keep your energy levels up and down the pitch. You get people back. But I think the main thing is that you're gonna get goals from pretty much everywhere in your team. You know, I think Coburn is a great player. I think he's outstanding. I think he's going to get into the box quite a bit. He's good finisher, 100% good finisher, and he is going to be your Heider Helgeson, I think, for the season. If I'm allowed to say that, But goals from Arconte, if I'm pronouncing that right, and Kondal coming off the bench. But I think we all should give a shout for Negil as well. What performance he had against Norwich. But Norwich fans, I don't know what's going on. You've had a good transfer window, I think, and you have a good manager in Philip Clement, or good head coach, as I'd say. You know, you've done really well in the transfer market. You have some good players, but I just don't know what happened to you. You know, you last week you was very unlucky not to win that game. I think you deserved to win against West Brom at home, but this game you were just dominated from a strong Millwall side, I think. And fingers crossed, you know, playoffs for you as well. But I think Millwall on the day were a lot better. So yeah. But going on to, I believe it is Blackburn versus Middlesbrough. So Blackburn 2-1 winners on the day. Very surprising result, because Middlesbrough I have up there as one of my favourites. You know, Middlesbrough for me, watching them at the end of last season with Hellberg and how they performed, and even this season, I was hoping for a bit more. You know, they've made some signings. They've obviously lost their best talent in Hayden Hackney, I would say. And I think that's a big lose for them, because Hayden Hackney is a valuable asset for Borough. He was in midfield, you know. He was that key player to make sure that winning the ball in the defensive half and pushing it on for the attack, and even getting the attack going, not just with goals but with assists as well, and being played into that character of helping the team score goals. So look, Whittaker and Lancashire obviously have had a great start. Lancashire obviously didn't score against Blackburn but struggled, and obviously first game of the season he was really well. But I think what killed off Middlesbrough was counter-attacks for Blackburn. You know, Blackburn did really well defensively, and obviously bringing the ball up into their chances when they got the chance of attacking, when Middlesbrough were lacking that defensive threat. And it was just 2 goals from the second half that killed them off, really. But Middlesbrough still played the attacking game, but just couldn't get it. And it's all shout-outs to Blackburn's defence with their keeper as well, and Toff. Man of the match performance from him. Goals from Cantwell and Gudjonsson, Sarmiento. Obviously, Middlesbrough did take the lead in the first half, but it was Blackburn to finish off the game with 2 good goals. Gudjonsson in the box, and obviously a nice little cross to Cantwell to thunder it in with a nice diving header. So yeah, 2-1 it ended there. I think Tony Mowbray, personally, great head coach for the Championship, and I may have just predicted them a bit quickly, Blackburn, to finish just above relegation. I think they'll survive a bit more than that. But yeah, Kim Hellberg, I think he'll fix it up. I think he'll get there eventually. You know, he's starting to perform, you know, hopefully under the way he wants to. But I just feel like missing Hayden Hackney is a big asset for Borough. So yeah, one of the games that was very busy was Derby v Cardiff at Pride Park. Now it finished 2-2. Goals from Ashford and Salej for Cardiff, and Morris and Clark for Derby. Now both teams are pretty good, I'm not going to lie, in the sense of player wise of performances. Now very box to box from both teams, but for the second half I would sit here and say Cardiff were the better team. You know, Cardiff were very dominant to get that attack going in the second half and win the game, but it was just Derby's defence that helped them. And I think Cardiff have a chance of survival here now. I think, you know, 2 draws in 2 games, a great display against Wrexham and a great display against Derby. You know, they did an incredible job against Derby. You know, going to Derby sometimes can be hard because they do play a pretty much low block, and it can be a struggle. But for Cardiff to score first and then letting Derby score second, and then straight off the bat before half time, you know, I think they just lacked a bit of whatever it was that John Eustace said at half time for Derby to score straight away. But you had opportunities in the second half, Cardiff did, to finish it off, but just nothing there really. But I would sit here and say Colwell, you know, star player for sure. Great free kick against Wrexham, and I'm looking forward to watching him play. You know, I've bigged up Colwell for 3 seasons now. I've really liked enjoying watching him. You know, he's a very talented player. I think he's 24, 25 years old, and I'm hoping good things from him. I reckon in January someone will be after him for sure. Typical goals from Derby. how they play. But but with Cardiff as well, similarities to, I would say, Millwall a little bit. So yeah, I wouldn't say they're the best defensive attribute Cardiff are, but they have an attack which can get into that box and be a big threat. So yeah, but Bobby Clark, just a quick word on him. What a signing and what a player he is. Great goal. And hopefully we see more from him. You know, we will be talking about Bobby Clark a bit more during the season, because I think it is a phenomenal signing for Derby to get that from the team that they got him off. My team that I would sit here and say that I've picked for favourites to win the league, and I've enjoyed watching them for the last 2 games, and I did watch them tonight, which is obviously on a Tuesday night, Carabao Cup. Wolves did beat Preston 3-1 away, and obviously they were very lucky to get a win. Very lucky to get a draw against Blackburn with the call for the penalty. They were last week, but this week they were a very dominant force. Yet again, very brilliant game. I think they're gonna kill it this season. I think personally, you know, Preston did try their best, but they were just very weak in areas. And I think the star performer for Wolves at the moment is Fer Lopez. What a player, honestly. And I think the Championship needs to be careful with him. You know, Wolves have a little player on their hands in Fer Lopez. I like watching this guy. I really do for Wolves. I think he's a very good talent. Very good on the ball. Very good finisher. And he likes to pick out passes really well. You know, I wouldn't say he's the most skillfulest, but I would sit here and say he's a danger man, honestly, up front. When he's on that ball and on the attack, absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I'm going to enjoy watching him this season. You know, Raul Jimenez up front will be a great combination for him, but they have some great players anyway, Wolves do. And I honestly think they'll be standout Championship winners. I really do. And I think Lopez will be key player to that as well. So shout outs to Lopez for sure. I think we all need to watch out for him, honestly. You know, incredible player, man of the match performance, and he did score a credible goal in the 8th and 82nd minute. Adam Armstrong getting off the mark with 71-minute goal. Jordan Thompson scoring the only goal for Preston. Not much to really say after their loss as well last week against Bolton. But look, I think Paul Higginbottom has a big task to do. You know, they have some good players in Alfie Devine, Thierry Small, and obviously some others there, which need to improve, I would say. But hopefully Preston, hopefully you survive. Hopefully you can do the job and you get back on track. I know last season as well was a bit of a struggle for you, just like pretty much us. QPR v Bolton, my team. Obviously, if you want, we've catch the match reaction, the full video. I'll put the link below, hopefully, if I remember. But we have done the video. If you go to the channel, the video is there. But personally, all I got to say is this. You know, we probably will be the most possessed team in the Championship this season and a big threat. I think Millwall, there's other styles of play that are going to be dangerous to us. But if we're going to talk about great play and exciting football, QPR will be up there this season. I know that Julian Stefan has done an incredible job with this team. You know, it might not look the most strongest of teams, but I'm genuinely serious. Very exciting team, honestly. You know, I will sit here and say great first game of the season for QPR. Very dominant performance against Bolton. I did really predict that they would give us a challenge, but it wasn't even a challenge. It was just a great defense from Bolton that kept us from winning this. And I honestly believe that if we could finish our chances a bit more better in Richard Koenig in all them chances, we would have won by 4 goals already in the first half, or even 5. That's how good of a performance we did. And I just want to say shout outs to Adamson. You know, I judged Adamson pretty badly last season. He didn't do great. And this season, obviously, he's not a natural left back, and he's been taking cover for Boy Kemper injury, and obviously done a phenomenal job. And, you know, even against Portsmouth and even against Bolton, what a player he is. And I'm very surprised that he took Adamson and Benge off in the second half to replace Sirkin and Tariq Lamptey. But I think the real reason why it was to give debutants at home a chance, you know, to get some game time. But we have so much depth there now in defence that we could sit here and say we should be good for the season. I know last season we struggled with injuries, and I honestly believe that was a main problem of us hitting the top 10. Great keeping. We have, it's just everything was perfect apart from the finishing. And I will say this, Richard Kone will get there. I honestly have faith in him. I know it's very frustrating for us to watch him. And I'm not gonna talk bad about him because I really do like Kone. I think he's done a phenomenal job at Wickham, and I think he just plays a way that is best for him. And I think honestly the way we played for him was brilliant on the weekend, and it's just a finishing that was just not that great. But great defense from Bolton. They did really well to keep some chances out of our way. But big ups to them. I think they will survive comfortably. I will say I think they have a good head coach in Steven Schumacher, if I'm pronouncing that right, hopefully. But they also have some good talented players. So Bolton, obviously, I think are gonna be pretty much up there, challenging in between, I would say, 15, 16, 17, I would say now. So, yeah. Moving on, Southampton v Stoke. Now, Southampton seem a bit different this season at the start with Eka, I believe it's pronounced. Yep, Tonda. And obviously this game was a good win for them, 3-1 v Stoke at home at St Mary's. Goals from Larin, Mumbar and Ryan Manning on the spot. And we saw Ethan Galbraith score on the 26th minute for Stoke. Now, Southampton took a while to get into this game. It was pretty much end to end, but more of a chance, I would say, for Stoke City in the first half. And, you know, with all this Spygate stuff going on with the head coach last season, I think that's starting to come out and see a bit of a difference now, where he's looking at the opposition team in the first half on how they play, going into the half time, having that talk and letting them know what they need to do now. And it happened against Watford, and it's happened now against Stoke, and I can see that, and it's very good that they can do that Neil Warnock type of effect where he gets that team going for the second half. And I think that's what's going to happen now. I think we're going to see a lot more of a second half from Southampton than the first, depending on what the game plan is. But they got the result. That's the main thing. And they have some incredible players, fellow Cienza, and Azaz. You know, they have a strong defense, but I think Stoke have been pretty appalling the first game and the second game. You know, I thought Ethan Galbraith would have helped them in midfield a bit more. You know, they have made some other signings, but it's just been appalling for Stoke, even with a good coach like Mark Robbins. I'm very surprised of that. So look, hopefully Stoke get back into it. You know, they did have a good first half, I think, but Southampton, for me, you know, they're gonna have incredible second halves. They are, and you know, some good players there, and there's gonna be some good times for them. I think they're going to be at an advantage at home quite a bit, and they might struggle on the road a little bit as well. So yeah, but good game from Southampton there. A pretty much boring game yet again with Sheffield United going to Swansea. Swansea last week obviously were playing Stoke, and this week they obviously had a very dominant performance against Sheffield United. Now, I'm very surprised with Chris Wilder right now, because usually Chris Wilder does a good job with Sheffield United in the sense of getting them up there, fighting for promotion, but I just don't see that oomph anymore that they used to do up front. You know, they've lost some players. You know, Patrick Bamford's in there, O'Hare, but I don't think Patrick Bamford's there anymore, you know, like he used to be. You know, he was phenomenal for Leeds, but for Sheffield United, he's not great. You know, Callum O'Hare, brilliant for Coventry, but for Sheffield United, you know, he has some good performances, but he's not the same player as what I'm used to seeing from Coventry. And, you know, they have Tanganga and McCallum at the back there with McGuinness. Burrows on the left there as well. But it's still confusing to me where their finishing is so appalling up front yet again. And even on this, where it's 0-0, and Swansea as well, you know, two good defences, I would sit here and say, but the attacking threat on both sides were, for finishing, was appalling. You know, they weren't great whatsoever. You know, they were getting into the boxes each other, but they just weren't brilliant whatsoever, and that's all I can say about them. Now, West Ham v Charlton. West Ham, obviously, I have a second for the season, and I'll be honest, I'm not very confident now in them finishing second. I will say that. I think a lot has to go into these performances. You know, they are outdoing the teams. They're outdoing them in momentum, attacking threat, and all of that, but they're not good on the counter attack. You know, Charlton scored 2 goals from in the first half and the second half, you know, from Lloyd Jones and Tyrese Campbell in going down 2-0, and Charlton pretty much went for it, you know, with the counter attacks, and apart from that, they were pretty much dead afterwards, you know. And second half was all West Ham, and it was only Joel Perreault goal and a missed penalty to unluckily finish 2-2, which was a horrible penalty from Tati, to be honest, hitting the post. I thought it would have finished 2-2, to be honest, but defending wise for Charlton, pretty decent, I would say. Okonkwo doing some great saves, but star player Tyrese Campbell, yet again, like last week against Derby, brilliant performance again this week. Jared Bowen would obviously be the player to watch out for, and Solomon for West Ham. But you know what? I feel like some teams might be a big advantage against them. You know, especially like Millwall. I think Millwall will be a big threat to West Ham. I really do. And that is a big clash as well for fan bases. So yeah, but Charlton take the win 2-1 at the London Stadium. To Wrexham v Watford, another game that was pretty end to end. Now Wrexham obviously coming off of a draw, a last minute goal against Cardiff at Cardiff. First home game of the season for them against Watford, coming off of obviously Watford doing a good job against Southampton. And obviously it was Watford to strike first with Kromagard, the very tall striker that Watford have. I really enjoyed watching him last season. Very good player in the way that Watford had him playing. But personally, I'm very surprised Wrexham didn't get the win for this. You know, the first half was pretty much all Watford, but then the second half happened. Wrexham came out looking like they wanted the win, obviously with 1-1. They had some chances, and I think really what it was pretty much good defending by Watford that pretty much ended the game really well for them. So, look, Wrexham, I will sit here and say they will probably still get playoffs. I think they're a good side. I think they have the players, and that's why they're a good side. And I genuinely think they got a lot more to do. You know, they've got Kiefer Moore up front, an experienced striker. But the question is, for you, Wrexham, is he finished? I know, obviously, you know, he's Welsh and he's a phenomenal striker for set pieces and getting the ball into the box. But, you know, I think possibly you might want to start thinking about using somebody else, possibly, you know. So, yeah. But ends in 1-1 there. Now, last game of the day was a win for West Brom. Now, there's a lot of talk about West Brom at the moment. A lot of talk about how they're playing and you know, the results. You know, they beat Norwich last week, and they've beaten Burnley this week at home. Now, going into the season, I didn't think West Brom would be starting off so well, just because of how they've been in the last couple of seasons. And I would sit here and say, you know, they've made good signings. You know, I would say when they brought in the head coach last season, I don't know why they brought him in. You know, I don't think Ryan Mason was a good head coach for West Brom, I'll be honest. You know, they did have the opportunities, but I thought it was a gamble and a risk to bring him in. And I think James Morrison has kicked off really well. You know, last week was a dominant performance from Norwich. Personally, I think I would sit here and say it was a lot better game from West Bromwich Albion against Burnley, personally. I think the first half kicked off really well. Yeah, so I think West Brom have pretty much shocked me this season already. You know, they've made some good signings they have this season. You know, Jimmy J. Morgan, very quality striker for Chelsea he was. Youngster, obviously going out on loan to Peterborough, who killed it. They obviously have, for me, one of the not signings, but one of the players that I really enjoyed watching last season for West Brom was Price. Now, when they lost Fellows, they needed someone to do well on the wing, and Price did an exceptional job to do that last season, and he's kicking it off again this season with 2 goals. I think one was a penalty as well. So, shouts to Price. Honestly, very good, talented Championship player and one to watch out for. But I think Whitewell was someone that I was very interested in watching on the weekend. You know, Galvez and him on the right were pretty decent. You know, Jimmy J. Morgan got an assist, not any goals, but still a good performance from the whole team. I think Callum Styles only got a bad rating because of the own goal that they scored for Burnley, but that could have been more than 3-1. I'll be honest with you, that could have been way more than 3-1. That could have ended really badly for Burnley. Nicky Hayne, I don't know what he's doing. It's going to be probably a struggle for him at the start. You know, they have some good players, like really good players in Hannibal, Carl Walker, Edwards, you know, other players like Humphreys as well. But West Brom just dominated that second half against them and just pretty much killed it off. And I don't know what's going to happen with more signings with West Brom, but I think they're going to be up there challenging for playoffs, I think, as well. You know, I think very, very good performance from them at home. I think on the away hand, they might struggle, but let's look out for them. I'm not going to, second game of the season, I'm not going to kill them off straight away, but very impressive performance, a lot better than last week. But 2 wins for them for this season. Obviously, week 2, obviously all over, and the table, Millwall up top now with 2 wins, West Brom 2 wins, second, Charlton 3 wins, 2 wins, and then finishing in third at the moment. And obviously in the playoffs, obviously Charlton are, Wolves 1 draw 1 win, QPR 1 win 1 draw, Blackburn 1 draw 1 win, Watford 1 win 1 draw, and Bolton 1 win 1 draw. Look, if I sit here and said predicting that as the start of the season, I would not have said that one bit. You know, Millwall, yes. Probably West Brom, no. Charlton, no. Wolves, yes. QPR, I was hope so. Watford, doubtly. Blackburn, doubtly. I would presume that Middlesbrough would have been up there straight away. I would presume West Ham, Burnley, but it's a bit of a different time right now. You know, Championship is changing quite a bit, and we're seeing, I personally say, the best league in the world right now. Absolutely incredible. I enjoy watching the Championship, and the only reason why I say best league in the world for me is because, not just because of, like, you know, I know a lot of people like the talent of the Premier League and all of that, but for me it's about the drama, the atmosphere, you know, when you go and watch these games, even on the telly, it's like, I don't think anyone will understand fighting for survival, fighting for playoffs, fighting for promotion. It's an incredible league to be in, and obviously I know some people don't want to be on it because it's a very hard league to get into and a very hard league to get out of. So look, I'm very looking forward to the rest of the season. I am, and I think the table is going to be up and down this season. But that's it for week 2. Obviously week 3 coming up. Let us know what your thoughts are on week 2 and what your predictions are for week 3, and we go from there. But don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, if you're enjoying the channel, and peace, love, positivity as always, people. We'll catch you real soon.